translated by Tagore. And this is time that we come to find Sarojini Naidu with the sobriquet Nightingale of India, the very popular Indian poetess known by the sobriquet Nightingale of India. And she was the first woman to become the governor of an Indian state. So notable for her involvement as a freedom fighter, and she was also the president of the Indian National Congress, the first Indian woman. She was the first Indian woman to become the president of the Indian National Congress. And she was born in Hyderabad in a Bengali family, and her father had a doctorate in science and so did some work in the Edinburgh University, England. And her brother Harindranath Chaudhuri, we remember the name of Harindranath Chaudhuri also, Sarojini Naidu's brother. And he was also a poet, playwright and an actor, Harindranath Chaudhuri. And when Sarojini was young, she got a scholarship called the Nizam Scholarship. Nizam Scholarship. And it helped her to go to England and to study there. And she went to England and studied there. And after all, on her return to India, she joined the Indian National Congress and came into contact with Gopalakrishna Gokhale, Tagore, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Annie Besant, Gandhi and Nehru. And she was one of the important members of the Indian freedom movement. And her writing poetry started when she was very young. And her first collection of poems called The Golden Threshold. And there are very famous poems included in The Golden Threshold. The Golden Threshold was published in the year 1905, and the collection included poems like Coromandel Fishes. So Coromandel Fishes is actually a poem about the Indian fishermen. And most often her poems are connected with the life of the Indian villages doing different kinds of activities. And Coromandel Fishes speak about the life of the fishermen living in the Coromandel coast. Rice Brothers, Rice, the beginning of the poem. And it's a folk song. And it is included in the collection The Golden Threshold. And The Golden Threshold appeared in the year 1905, and it was her first collection. And her second collection, The Bed of Time, that appeared in 1912. And remember always the names of collections written by Sarojini Naidu. So when we remember Sarojini Naidu, we have to remember the years of the publication of the collections and the titles also. Remember that the first collection came out in 1905 and it was entitled The Golden Threshold. And the second collection came out in 1912 and it was called The Bed of Time. And the third collection came out in 1917. It was called The Broken Wing. And all these three collections, The Golden Threshold, The Bed of Time and The Broken Wing, were collected together in a single volume. And it was entitled The Septuagint Flute. The Songs of India, it was called The Septuagint Flute. So remember that the three collections. The first collection, The Golden Threshold, the second collection, The Bed of Time, and the third collection, The Broken Wing, together published under the title The Septuagint Flute. Actually, it's not the title given to a single collection. So the three collections written by Sarojini Naidu, so brought together and published under the title The Septuagint Flute, or The Songs of India, and it was brought out in the year 1937. During the time she was alive, and she died in 1949. And she continued to write, and her last collection of poems, The Feathers of the Dawn, it was called The Feather of the Dawn, and it was published posthumously. Naidu died in 1949, and the last collection made by her, The Feather of the Dawn, was published posthumously in 1961, by her daughter Padmaja Naidu, and Padmaja Naidu was also a poet. And she brought out a collection of the poems written by Sarojini Naidu in her later career. After the publication of the Septuid Flute, the Septuid Flute actually contained 3 collections of poems. Naidu brought out her first collection in 1905 and it was called The Golden Threshold. And the second collection came out in 1912 and it was called The Blade of Time. And the third collection came out in 1917 and it was called The Broken Wing. And all these 3 collections were together published under the title The Septuid Flute or The Songs of India, and it was in 1937. And her last collection, entitled The Feather of the Dawn, was published posthumously in 1961. Naidu died in 1949, and the publication was made by her daughter Padmaja Naidu. And the themes and background of her poems purely Indian. And in her poems, she spoke about the living conditions of the Indian people. And we come to find a picture of Indian panorama. Their festivals, their special occupations are all dealt in her poems. And remember that Sarojini Naidu was the first Indian woman to become the president of Indian National Congress, and she was the first lady to become a governor of an Indian state. And she was friends with Gokhale, Tagore, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Annie Besant, Gandhi and Nehru, and the collections of her poems. So remember, Sarojini Naidu, known by her sobriquet, Nightingale of India. And this is time that we have to discuss another important writer, Nirad Chaudhuri. Nirad Chaudhuri, about Chaudhuri I told you when I was discussing the novel by E.M. Forster, Passage to India, I referred to Nirad Chaudhuri. And while discussing the novel written by Rudyard Kipling entitled The Kim, so I made a discussion on Nirad Chaudhuri. And while discussing Alexander Pope, we made a discussion on Nirad Chaudhuri. So these 3 writers are in some way connected with Nirad Chaudhuri. Nirad Chaudhuri was a popular writer who lived in Britain towards the end of his career. He started his career in India. He was born in India, but he supported imperialism and he went to England and naturalized as an English citizen and remained there and continued to live for almost 102 years. He had a long life. He was born in 1897 and he died in 1999. Exactly 102 years he continued to live. And there is a blue plaque fixed at the house of Nirad Chaudhuri, and Chaudhuri became a professor at the University of Oxford. And he supported the imperialist attitude of the British people. And he started as a nationalist and supported Indian national movement and Indian freedom struggle. But at a later stage, he left India and went to Britain, became naturalized as a British citizen and supported the imperialist movement. Was a great supporter of imperialism, and the anti-Indian attitudes of Nirad Chaudhuri became very controversial. And this is the reason why I told you. So it was Nirad Chaudhuri who maintained the opinion that the one English novel written by an Englishman about India is Kim. The one and only novel that depicted a real Indian situation is Kim, written by Rudyard Kipling, was the opinion made by Nirad Chaudhuri. And Nirad Chaudhuri never supported the popular novel written by E.M. Forster, Passage to India. Normally, when we consider the Indian life properly depicted in an English novel, we consider E.M. Foster's novel Passage to India. And Foster has been a household name as far as the Indians are concerned. And he produced a very popular novel entitled The Passage to India, and later became a film also. And we always, Indians always remember E.M. Foster for his novel Passage to India. If this is asked a question. So according to Nirad Chaudhuri, which novel written by an Englishman about India is found depicting a proper picture of India? A proper picture of India is depicted in the novel Kim, according to Nirad Chaudhuri. And in the area of Alexander Pope also, I have discussed the name of Nirad Chaudhuri. Because Nirad Chaudhuri's autobiography is called Autobiography of an Unknown Indian. And it was produced by him in 1951. And after all, the autobiography influenced the British to give him a naturalization. Winston Churchill was greatly influenced by the autobiography written by Nirad Chaudhuri, and so it was Winston Churchill who gave order for the naturalization of Nirad Chaudhuri. And he produced a sequel. He actually produced a sequel to his autobiography entitled Thy Hand Great Anarch, and he had taken the title Thy Hand Great Anarch from Pope's poem Dunciad. So in the poem written by Alexander Pope, we come to find Nirad Chaudhuri, so using the end line from Pope's poem Dunciad. And the sequel to his autobiography is entitled Thy Hand Great Anarch. Actually, the last lines are Thy hand great anarch, let the curtain fall, and universal darkness buries all. These are the end lines of Pope's poem Dunciad. Dunciad is actually the masterpiece of Alexander Pope. And the poem ends with the line, Thy hand great anarch, let the curtain fall, and universal darkness buries all. And from those lines, Nirad Chaudhuri took the line, Thy hand great anarch, and used it as the title for the sequel to his autobiography. His autobiography is called The Autobiography of an Unknown Indian, and the sequel is called Thy Hand Great Anarch, and it was published in 1988, and the title is taken from Pope's poem. And this is the reason why we have discussed Nirad Chaudhuri in the area of Rudyard Kipling, and in the area of Alexander Pope, and in the area of E.M. Foster. And we discussed Nirad C. Chaudhuri in detail in another video. Thank you.